by starting on time, and as others come in throughout this meeting that we have, we will spend some time with them afterwards to catch them up or answer any questions that they have. First of all, I'm Tom Kripliver, and I'm the superintendent here at Lake Station Community Schools, and I'm working on my 10th year here at Lake Station as superintendent. So I'm very pleased and very proud to have that honor and privilege to be superintendent that long. I am also a graduate of Lake Station Community Schools, and I attended Polk Elementary School, then Edison Junior Senior High School, and this facility where I graduated in long time ago. So we won't go there, but thank you again for coming. On the tables next to where you are seated, there are two pieces of literature that I'd like for you to take, and we will talk about them during our meeting this afternoon. One is a handout, and it talks about the school districts in Lake and Porter County that have referendums. And on the back of that sheet is the question that's going to appear on the ballot when you go to vote November the 5th. And what we've done is listed the actual question that will appear. And then we want to talk with you to let you know what that question really means. Because the General Assembly back in 2021 decided that they wanted to pass a law, and in that law, write what those referendum questions were to look like. So we had to follow that General Assembly law. The Lake County Assessor, the Lake County Board of Elections had to write that question as the law was dictated. So we'll go into a little bit more information about that with you. But tonight, the purpose of our meeting is really to give you information about the upcoming referendum, which is a renewal referendum, because we were fortunate back in 2017 that our voters and our community supported and passed a referendum for Lake Station Community Schools. So this time, this referendum is just asking for a continuation of that referendum that was voter approved back in 2017. Because it's a renewal, that also means what we asked our community to consider in 2017, we're asking them to consider that again. Now, what do I mean by that? The referendum is set at a levy of 54 cents. So 54 cents on every $100 of assessed valuation came to Lake Station Community Schools. And it's a renewal because we're asking for the very same thing, 54 cents. Not any more, not any less. Just the same amount that people have been paying for the last 7 years for the Lake Station Community Schools referendum. What I'd like to show you up on the screen is the website that was put together to explain the referendum. And I'm not going to go through all of it, but there are some key things that I want to point out to you so that you can go home, you can bring this up on your computer, your laptop, even your cell phone, and have access to this website and dive into more information if you would like. But as you bring up the website, you'll see these tabs across the top. And the home tab is basically what you're seeing now. And you can scroll down on the home page and you can see that our mayor, Mayor Bill Carroll, and our Lake Station City Council have endorsed this referendum for this coming year. And this is the City Council's resolution. That's the mayor's letter endorsing and asking for your support for the upcoming referendum question on November the 5th. The next tab I want to show you is the tax calculator. And this was put together not by Lake Station Schools. This was put together with the assistance of the Lake County Auditor and the Lake County Assessor. And the purpose of this calculator is for you, the individual homeowner, to put in the assessed valuation of your home in this box, and then it will automatically calculate for you how much this referendum will cost you a month, cost you for the entire year. And we got some information from the Lake County Assessor's Office because I was curious, what is the average homeowner home worth in Lake Station? And then with all the deductions added into it, what is on average a Lake Station homeowner is going to pay for the referendum? So from the county auditor's office, the average gross assessed valuation on a home in Lake Station is $117,958. So let's just say $117,000. When you consider all of the deductions that's built into mortgages, that brings it to a net assessed valuation of $43,724. So now you went from a gross assessment of 117 down to a net assessment after all your deductions have been calculated to 43,724. Your property taxes are based on the net assessed valuation, which is for an average homeowner, a Lake Station, is 43,724. When you plug in that 43,000 with the 54 cents levy on the referendum, that comes out to $236.11 a year. And if you break that down, that comes down to $19.68 a month. That's what Lake Station Schools is asking our community to continue as they look at this and support Lake Station students. A JJ's Pizza once a month. That's what we're asking for. So this calculator, oh, and one other thing about the calculator is this line that's in blue. I don't know about you, but I would not be able to answer the question, what's my net assessed gross evaluation of my home? So by clicking on this blue line, that will take you right to the county auditor's office. And then in the space that's provided, just type in your address. And once you type in your address, a picture of your home and what your assessed valuation is. Then you take that number that they give you and plug that into that box. So in this box, we used 117,000, came out to 1941 for your monthly cost and about 232 for your annual yearly cost. Now, the calculator will be different from person to person because your property taxes are different from person to person. But to identify for you, I encourage you to look at the tax calculator that's up on our website. That way you can see what the impact will be for you and your family in your home. Okay, we'll back out of the tax calculator. Oh, sure, Greg, go ahead.
I just want to say how important it is to go to the website and actually get your assessed value from the website and not guess, because your home is probably, your market value is probably $50,000 to $60,000 more than what your assessed value will be. So it's very important that you go to the website and actually find your assessed value and not just say my house is worth X, because you're probably gonna be $60,000 or $70,000 more than what's actually assessed for.
Thank you, Greg. And that's a good point. Market value and assessed evaluation of your home is very much two different things. So thank you, Greg, for pointing that out. Going back to the web page, we've just left the tax calculator we could go to the revenue spending plan. When we put together the proposal to do the referendum and to renew it, we had to say, okay, if this referendum is renewed, how are you going to spend the money? And it's been broken down on this spending plan, just referendum money and how that money will be used. And at the very top, item number 1, which we here at Lake Station Schools consider very important, is school bus transportation. Our families, our students rely on school transportation. So out of just the referendum money, we have set aside $484,743 every year of the length of the referendum. So that's how much money from just the referendum dollars we will contribute to transportation. Then we have maintenance and expanding academic programs for our students, recruitment and retention of teachers. We have budgeted $346,245. Student safety and security, very important this day and age, more so than when you and I were in school. Student safety, $138,498 every year provided for that particular line item. Other educational needs, $69,248. So this brings us to a total of $1,384,979. This is how the plan for the referendum money will be divided out and what it's going to be spent on. Now, I want you to scroll up just a little bit more because you see Neighbors New Vista High School and you see Discovery Charter School. Well, why are we talking about charter schools? What's the big deal with that? The big deal is in the last General Assembly that ended their session back in March of 2024, they said that in 4 counties across the state of Indiana, only 4 counties, if you have a referendum, you have to share your referendum money with charter schools where Lake Station students attend. So we have some students that attend New Vista High School out in Portage on Route 6. And we have some students that attend Discovery Charter School and 21st Century School. So we had to contact those charter schools and see if they wanted to participate in our referendum. Well, after giving it some thought, 21st Century Charter School dropped out. They don't want to participate in our referendum. But NEO, New Vista High School, and Discovery do. So we have to share a portion of our referendum money with those 2 charter schools. That was a very difficult dilemma for our school board. The dilemma being, did you ask for more than 54 cents to make up for the loss of money that's going to these 2 charter schools? Or do you keep it the same? We decided through much discussion and much thought with the board members to keep it the same, 54 cents. Yes, sir.
One thing, was that money from the past, the referendum that's been going on, was that money going there already?
No.
Okay, that's awesome.
Good question. It's a brand.
Legislation that just passed. Also too, with that as well, with that new legislation, they also have to help participate in it. They also have to help financially with it as well. But also they have to show their records on how they're spending their money as well. That was one of the things I like that some of the legislators that were there. So just so you guys are aware.
And your question was just, is it going to the charter schools? Was it going to the charter schools? Are you talking about everything on the list or just the charter schools?
No, I was just curious, if with the past referendum, if that money was going. So we would essentially be losing $26,000 out of the referendum that we had.
Yes.
Right, because 13,317 will go to both of those schools. And by the way, I apologize, I didn't recognize the special guests that we have with us this evening, and I really appreciate them taking time to be here, and that is members of the River Forest School Board. And Richard Perez, I appreciate your input into the conversation and adding more insight and more information to our discussion tonight. So I really appreciate them being here.
Thank you.
We're very glad to have you.
I wasn't trying to be snobby.
No, you're fine.
We encourage questions. We encourage, please ask all the questions you want.
Nobody involved in this, the system right now, wants to have to share this money with the charter schools. And
Right.
the charter schools are so well funded as it is. This is only hurting public schools even more. And when the referendum failed last election, that was the last election we could have passed it and not had to share those funds.
Right.
Unfortunately, with it not, passing, now any referendum that passes forward, we have to share these funds with them.
Right.
And I think, Ms. Perez kind of shared about it, if they want to be part of those funds, so the two that have elected, they have to share their finances with, the public, and they
Right.
ask the public record, everything that's to be shared, so everybody can now see those finances. 21st century said, no, we don't want to share our finances, we're gonna back out. Now that's why they're not getting the funds. But that's part of them having to receive these funds is, okay, well, we'll share it with you, but now you have to share all your financial records as well.
So I would assume though that, I mean, I see that it's different numbers for 3 different schools. 2 of them are the same, but I'm assuming that is gonna fluctuate with students that may stay
That's
there, or
the,
if they left
it's the
there.
amount of students from our district that
Right.
attend that school.
Right,
And what you see there with the lowest number, the school that dropped out, that 12, 11, that's the number per student.
right.
So then obviously you can kind of,
Charter schools and public schools don't get the same funding. Their formulas are totally different, sadly.
Yeah.
So,
Well, then we were gonna ask how you guys calculate how much to give the charter school.
That's already a set rate. It's not something we say, we'll give you a 500 today. So it's set out for how much it's going to them, per student.
Did they let you know how many students are from Lake Station?
Yes, they had to disclose that information to us. So because, and that's a good question. So because of New Vista and Discovery getting the same amount of money, there's 11 students that attend Discovery and 11 students that attend New Vista.
I think it's important to note too, that those are just our students in the charter schools. So they obviously have everyone else's school district students there, so they will participate in other districts that have referendums as well.
but also too, it's pretty important to let everyone know that are knocking on doors and getting the information out there that with the formula of how schools are funded and how much you get per child, you know, when you let them know, hey, you know, charter schools are getting this much compared to what public schools are getting, it's important when people do this, well, why are they getting that much? And then they'll know. I mean, they turned education sadly into a business. And so one thing you shouldn't do is put any kind of child whatsoever in the category of a business. Yeah. You should run schools like a business, but it should not be a for-profit.
Very good points. Thank you. We're going to leave the spending plan, and I want to take you to another bullet point.
Tom, before we go, please.
Sure.
So go at the top of the board that the transportation was 484,000. I just want the public to know that's just what's coming out of the referendum. What is that total cost for transportation a year?
About 800,000.
Correct. So this is just what we're gonna spend out of the referendum for transportation. We've had that come up before. And since busing is gonna be such an important issue, whether this thing passes or fails, I want to know the total cost of the transportation.
Sure. Not a problem. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, going back to the home page of the website, I want to go to the tab that talks about the question clarification, because this is what we really need to get people to understand. And this is the most difficult to understand because of the way we have to write the question. So on the back of the piece of paper that you have at your place where you're sitting, it gives you the public question. And this is the public question as it will appear on the ballot. What we tried to do under what it means is to explain what does that question really mean? What's it saying? And for that, I'm going to ask one of our school board members, the secretary of our school board, Kevin Music, to talk about that for us. Thank you, Kevin.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. I know that this has kind of been going on for a long time, and I'm sure there's plenty of people in this room that are tired of hearing the word referendum. I know I'm one of them. But I really appreciate you all coming out tonight. And again, River Forest School Board coming out like that, we really appreciate it. We need support from all over. We're all a community here. Even though we lost the football game and I had to wear the ingot, gear and everything like that, we're all a community. We're all in this together, and we need to support each other. So thank you so much. We'll see. Okay. But getting on to the public question here. So it is kind of a long-winded question. I understand that a lot of people are going to have a hard time understanding what it is. So, just to give you a brief overview here, it does say, shall Lake Station Community Schools continue to impose increased property taxes paid to the school corporation by homeowners and businesses for 8 years immediately following the holding of the referendum for the purpose of funding school bus transportation, maintaining and expanding academic programs, recruitment and retention of teachers and staff, student safety and security services, and other educational needs. The property tax increase requested in this referendum was originally approved by the voters in 2017, and if extended, will increase the average property tax paid to the school corporation per year on a residence within the school corporation by 65%. So that's obviously the part where people are going to start freaking out, is when they see these numbers. Also, and if extended, will increase the average property tax paid to the school corporation per year on a business property within the school corporation by 58%. So we do have the breakdown of what it means a little bit here on the other side of that as well. So of course, the tax purpose is as listed in the question for school bus transportation, the academic programs, the retaining teachers and staff, student safety and security. This is a continuation. It does say to continue to impose. It's not that we are increasing it. We're not asking for an additional tax in addition to the one that's already in place. The current referendum ends at the end of this year, and unless this vote passes, it will not continue into next year. So we are asking for a renewal. It's asking for the same tax rate that has been paid for the last 7 years. Part of the tax impact here on number 3 over there, it says if you take the money collected from the 54-cent referendum renewal and compare that total revenue to what Lake Station Community Schools would get from property taxes without it, you find that it provides 65% of the funding from for the operating budget. So what I've been the way I've been explaining it to people to try and help them understand is, in your individual tax situation, you aren't going to see your taxes go up 65% from this, even though that's the way maybe the question sounds to a lot of people. What it does mean, though, is that the schools will receive 65% more funding than they would without it. There's more to it. There's a lot of complicated tax math behind it. But at the end of the day, our effective tax rate went down this year compared to last year. And that's part of the reason why the percentage is different on the question this year compared to last year. What happened was we paid off debt that lowered our school tax rate by a decent amount. I actually have my tax information over here. And so, of course, it's difficult to say because the tax caps affect everyone differently and everyone's tax situation is different. But just for example, with my tax situation, my taxes went down, the school district tax went down the rate was down from 248 to 185. And then that meant that the taxable amount dropped $229 roughly. It was a nearly 20% decrease. Now, Not everyone sees that relief because of the way the tax caps work. You may not see a difference in your tax bill when that happens. You may. It all depends on your situation. But the other thing to keep in mind is that you also don't even pay the rates that I just talked about. Our effective tax rate is 83 cents. So the comparison, as you can see up here on the screen, this is something I put together, so forgive me if it's not the prettiest thing, but the effective tax rate for the schools last year was $1.17, and the referendum was 54 cents. So once we paid off that debt, it lowered the effective tax rate of the schools to 83 cents, but the referendum that we're asking to continue stayed at the same rate. So what that means is that the referendum is taking up a bigger percentage of the overall funds that we're getting from property taxes. So that's where, if you do the math on the side here, you can see 54 cents divided by the roughly 83 cents gets you 65%. So that's the thing. I understand that not everyone's gonna cling to that and understand it right away, but I just want to make it clear that your individual taxes will not see that increase of 65%. It's overall the schools receive 65% more funding compared to our effective tax rate.
So the taxes shouldn't not go up at all.
Well, obviously that's the question a lot of people ask, and at the end of the day, the assessor's office dictates what assessed value is. So we can't say that somebody's taxes will go up or will go down. That's not our choice. We're just a school system. We can't make that call. With the referendum, we're asking for the same rate. We can't sit there and ask for a specific amount. We can ask for a rate. Obviously, there are factors outside of our control. So by all means, as Dr. Kripplever just shared earlier, we have the newest information showing the average gross assessed value of a home at roughly 117,000. Now, that does affect how much people pay, but what we're looking at right now is still an average of $19 a month. And that means we have roughly half of our people in our city paying less than that, and roughly half of them paying more than that.
Let me put it another way then. Unless the assessor raises their assessed value,
Yeah.
their taxes will not go up if this is renewed.
Yeah, exactly. If the assessor makes a change, that's up to the assessor's office. But at the end of the day, we have no control over that. All we can do is ask for the support that we need to keep the schools running properly. It's also important to keep in mind too, things get more expensive over time. That's just how it works. There's inflation, there's higher costs on repairs for things. Everything costs more money nowadays, and I understand that's hard for everyone. It's also hard for the schools. So when we have a tax rate, and that way it kind of helps us keep up with the times a little bit. So it's a rate, it's not a flat amount. But at the end of the day, I don't want to be asking anyone for this at all. I don't think we should have to be asking for this at all, but that's a decision that's made at the state level, and there's only so much we can do, and we need to make sure we're taking the best care of our kids as we can. And this is the only way that we can really do that at this time. Now, does anyone have any questions about the question, about the percentages? Is there any way that I can clear that up anymore?
Hey, Kevin, I want to say something. When it comes to this question was designed to freak out the citizens. Okay, it was designed because what happened in 2009 when they started this referendum stuff, they stopped wanting to fund public education, right? And they created this referendum system. The question was that they anticipated schools not passing referendums. They anticipated them not passing. By their surprise, we started passing referendums. Communities rallied behind their schools and said, you know what, I want my public school to succeed. So then, as the years go by, and was it 70%, 75% referendums are passing? The state, who wants to turn it into a private business, decides, how can I confuse the citizens? You know what, I'm gonna change the question. Like he said, the dollar amount doesn't change, right? But people downstate said, well, we need to confuse the citizens. So they came out with this question to confuse the normal citizen. So understand that this is their game that they're playing downstate. They want to take public education and make it privatized. That's their end game. That's always been their end game. And it's communities like yours are fighting back. and saying, we value our public education. We value our students. Every student, no matter where they live, deserves the same type of education, no matter where they live. The kid in Lake Station should get the same, keep my language nice, the same type of education that a kid in Belleville gets. You know, the same kid in Crown Point, the education he gets, Lake Station kids get, River Forest kids should get. If you look on this sheet, I mean, I see all the posts and everything. So you mean to tell me Crown Point's mismanaging, Gary, Griffith, Hammond, Hanover, Hobart, Lake Station, Lake Central, Munster, River Forest, Duneland, Bloom Grove, Union Township, Valparaiso. All those schools mismanaged their funds? No, they didn't. It's what the state has done to public education, which has forced these communities, even your Crown Points, your Belcoves, to ask for referendum. So understand, this question was designed to confuse the citizen, and that's what it's.
Yeah, exactly. There was a roughly two and a half or 2-page explanation of how they got to this percentage. And I mean, let's face it, even myself, who I kind of feel like I'm decent with math, even I got lost in the middle of it for a while there. When you have to sit there and your explanation for how you've gotten to the end of a math problem takes 2 pages, you clearly have some other motives behind it, if you ask me.
Didn't they close all of the Gary schools? I heard they don't have any public schools.
They didn't close the schools,
And the
but they
state closed them.
but they did take them over for a time. They actually
They took them over for budget of their finances. That's how charter schools originally got into Gary.
Yeah.
Actually, Gary,
I
one of
haven't
the-
seen any cloud the public schools now.
Oh, no, they still have.
Yes. So I believe last time I saw,
Administration of finance.
Yeah.
Back to the school board is running.
they just took over like a couple.
yeah, that was in the last couple of months that the residents, like, again, here in Lake Station, for example, I mean, we have a school board that is made up of elected officials. So what happened with Gary was they were taken over by the state. And here's what really happened is they had a management company from Florida come in. They paid them millions of dollars to try and right the ship in Gary. And then they still had to pass a referendum while it was under state control. So, if Gary would have passed the referendum that they were trying to pass, before they were taken over by the state, who knows what would have happened? Maybe there still would have been some issues. Maybe they could have got on the right track. I can't say for sure. But at the end of the day, even after all that effort was put in to have someone else come in and millions of dollars was poured into a company, I mean, and right now, I think the last I saw, there's still about 4,000 kids that are in the public schools in Gary, and I think that it's roughly 60% of them go to charter schools. So you can kind of see what happens when a public school system struggles and what swoops in to try to take its place. And over 90% of kids in Indiana are in public schools still, but they're not giving the appropriate funding to the public schools. They're funneling that money toward charter schools, private schools. I think there's somewhere around $400 million that has gone to private schools in the form of vouchers. And we're sitting here in Lake Station asking for our residents to pay more money to be able to keep buses going.
But don't forget how Rich Daniels took the original 500 million away from public education back when he was in ESCO. So never got put back.
600 million
600.
is going to private and charter.
And vouchers were put in.
And they get away with it.
Yeah, vouchers were intended to be kind of a good thing for those attending like private schools, for the low income communities,
Exactly.
But what they did was they figured out, oh wait, we can turn this into a business. Now to qualify for a voucher, if I'm not mistaken, it's like $250,000 originally, just only like 25, 30.
Yeah, exactly. For something that started out that would be a good boon to a lower income family that had maybe a struggling school system that they wanted to send their kids to a school that maybe was better for them. It turned into something where they've opened up the income requirements to where pretty much anyone can get it now. And now there are kids that are going to private schools and government funds are going to those private schools when those kids would have gone to that school with or without a voucher because their parents had enough money to send them to a private school. Exactly.
That are going to those schools, Ileana Christian, Van Train, Bishop Mill, 21st Century, all of those schools, I'm just talking about in our area in general, but That's what we're this year.
That's the thing, and, you know, to kind of piggyback off of that, you know, when our tax dollars stay in our community, these schools are the public good. Anybody, you know, just a quick show of hands, who graduated from Lake Station? Who's currently going, you know, I see a couple young faces out there. Anybody? You're going to school here? You guys?
No, no.
Oh, okay. So that's their school, but this is a community school. This is something that you paid in tax dollars over the years for however long the school has been here. This is something that you own. And legislation made downstate where we don't have a say. I mean, they put us to work to make us go out and stick our hands up to the public. But they forced us to do it. This is yours. This is all yours. Whether you're a student here, whether you're a homeowner, whether you graduated last year or 50 years ago, or whatever. I mean, this is for us. But those same people that are forcing us to stick our hands out to the public, to fund our school buildings and educate our students, those folks are taking that tax money and giving it to their buddies. It's in public or in private education. They're giving it to their churches, which, you know, I mean.
That's why this is designed this way, so they.
Right.
And you're gonna blame the local official, school board.
Right. Yeah, we end up being the bad guys.
That's gonna be the number one. They were trying to do that. My father used to serve on the force 30 years ago. They were trying to back then. Know that they attacked the teachers union and they went one after public.
Well,
And speaking of that, 30 years ago, there's a legislator downstate named Bob Benning, who's been on the Indiana Public School Committee for 30 years.
But he's a
florist.
no, he's a lobbyist.
Oh, yeah, well, he had to ask permission. Years when this person rolled over to Lake County, when they came into session, he asked permission to Brian Bosmer, who was the head Speaker of the House, and said, "Hey, is it okay if I lobby for private for-profit education?" And they kind of went, "Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it." Because he knew Bosma has his hands in the pie, still I'm sure does, even though he's not in office. And Eric Halbert has his hands in the pie.
well, and I'd like to go back to what you were saying for a moment as well. You know, that's one of the things I've heard a lot is there's a lot of finger pointing saying, you know, they're just mismanaging the funds. Where did all the money go? Those types of things. So something to keep in mind is that this is an operating referendum. And so what this means is that we use these funds every year for those purposes, whether it's the transportation or the safety pieces of it. It's not something that we just, you know, squirrel away as much as we can and then spend it on whatever we want. We use it every year for those purposes. And, you know, as has already kind of been brought up, we are not alone in having a referendum. Just to list a few of them, I mean, Crown Point, Gary, Griffith, Hammond has two, Hanover has two, Hobart has two. I mean, it's not just us. And so to sit there and think that, oh, it's just them mismanaging funds, but to see it happening in so many places, are you really going to sit there and say that every single school system that has a referendum in place is doing something that they shouldn't be doing when all of the financial records are public?
Politicians.
But yeah, so yes.
Before we get sidetracked again, I did this as soon as the superintendent was talking about, you know, the calculator and all that. And my wife just said that this wasn't live, so I guess whatever, if they watch it later, whoever's in this room, go over there and do it, calculate it for my market value on my house was way higher than the assessed value was. Seriously. So I'm looking at $34 a month for this. That's, I mean, really for the kids, that's big.
Well-
So if you have any concerns about it, look at it.
And that's something I've been trying to get across as well. I mean, with the average being $19 a month, I mean, that's how much Netflix costs about nowadays. If you want to be able to watch it on more, I mean, if you have more than one person in your house trying to watch Netflix at a time, you're paying like $25 a month. So, Dr.
I just
Triplett-
want to interrupt if I can, just real quick. We are recording this meeting so we can put it on our social media platforms. So thank you for bringing that up. When we have discussion from the audience, we're kind of cheating those that are watching this later online because they can't hear you. You don't have a microphone. So I'm going to ask Jacob if he would go around the room and provide you with the microphone, only because we want our other people watching this online later on to hear your good comments and to hear your good questions, not to stop the discussion, but only for them to be a part of it as well.
And so just like you said, to your point though, this is, I understand right now in general, things are more expensive for everyone and I get it. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Pretty much my whole family still lives here in Lake Station. My mom lives here. She's on a fixed income. She's paying about $10 a month. I know that I'm sitting probably around $22 a month or so, a little bit above the average. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to make sure that we can support the kids, get them to school, make sure that parents don't have to take a day off work or leave late, come home early to make sure that they can get their kids to and from.
I was just gonna say, I'll talk loud. That was the point I was gonna make, is how much is gas and how much does it cost you to drive your child to school 5 days a week? So you're looking at what gas is in comparison, and you're paying 10, 20, or 30.
Exactly. I mean,
That covers not just busing,
It's cheaper
but
than
so-
childcare.
Yeah, I was going to say a couple of the comments from the community out here, cost of gas. If you were to have to drive your kid to school, or if you needed to hire a babysitter or get somebody else involved to help them, in our situation, of course, with the e-learning has been a struggle. We don't want to be doing that. So we need to, get this pushed through so that we can get back to normal.
Kevin Trezek, the superintendent at River Forest. I just wanted to say very briefly, I have a family engagement that I'm a half hour late for, but I made a priority coming here. Our board made a priority coming here too. This is good for Lake Station kids. Everything you presented tonight, because we are a referendum school as well too, is correct. It's well done. It's well-meaning. It is money out of everyone's pockets. I live in our school district, so I know what it means to pay for a referendum as a parent and as a homeowner. We absolutely support Lake Station kids, and that's why they're here tonight. And but excuse me, my wife will probably be mad if I don't get home.
Thank you very much.
It was great conversation here. Wonderful job, by the way. Yep.
Just tell her it's Richie's fault.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Good night.
We had a place on the couch.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you being here, and I also appreciate the River Forest School Board for being here and our city council member for being here. Excuse me, because that's just a unified showing of how important not only referendum and public schools are, but we're all in this together. These are all Lake Station children. These are all Lake Station students in our public schools, and we need to do right by them. And unfortunately, the state, back in Governor Mitch Daniels' days, he's the one that made our state a referendum state. And that's the way it is. So we have to work within the guidelines and with the rules that the governor and the General Assembly established to make it work best for our kids. So we arrived at that 54 cents, not by pulling it out of the air. We wanted to really calculate what that 54 cents would do for our community. And quite honestly, it basically just makes up for the loss in property taxes due to the tax caps or tax credits, if you're the taxpayer, whatever you want to call it. So that 54 cents just makes up some of what we've lost in the property taxes. And that's how we derived at 54 cents. We didn't just pick it out of the air.
And, again, everyone's tax situation can be a little bit different, but just to share my own. after the tax cap kicks in and everything like that, my tax liability is actually at $1,615. The tax cap kicks in and keeps me at my 1% cap at 1,344. After the referendum gets applied, and for me that was 271 for this year, it gets me right back to the $1,615 that is my actual tax liability. So again, it's not always going to be pinpoint accurate for everyone. But you should kind of see, a similar situation in your own taxes. This is what I'm talking about right here, obviously. So that property tax liability is what would be paid if there was no tax cap in place for me. This is my information from my home. The property tax kicks in right here. And then if you're looking at your own property tax information, this is also where you can see exactly how much you're paying for the referendum. Right here, it says upward adjustment due to voter approved projects and charges, e.g. referendum. And so these numbers right here, you can see my tax liability and my total after the tax cap and then adding the referendum back in gets me exactly where my tax liability would be without the tax caps in place.
So could you explain then why there is a school district tax? Because a lot of times people are confused. They'll say that they're paying the $961 for the referendum. So can you explain where that number came from?
Yeah, so obviously a school district is going to have a tax rate. That's what I was talking about before, is we do have a tax rate for the school district. So another decision made at the state level has dictated that the normal tax rate for the schools has to go toward debt service first. So to kind of explain that, obviously, as with your own home, if you had a big project that you couldn't just pay for out of pocket, you have to take out a loan. We have a big project like a roofing repair or air conditioning. If we didn't have the funds outright to do that, we have to take loans for certain things to get those done. So with that, we have the property tax money that comes in, that's baseline, goes towards debt service first. And that's something we can't control. Again, the state mandated that money has to go to debt services first. The other part of this too is overall, when we look at how much funding we get for operations here in Lake Station, it fluctuates a little bit. We have anywhere from $150,000 to $400,000, depending on the year, that we get from excise tax and those other types of revenue streams. So assuming on the best year possible, we get $400,000, that's all we get. And we need 3.2 million to actually run the schools every year. So what we do is we transfer money from the education fund into our operating fund. The state allows us to only transfer 15% of that education fund. That comes out to roughly, 1.4 million, close to that. And then the referendum makes up the other 1.4 that we need to keep operating. So generally speaking, if we still have my slides available by any chance. This right here is something else I put together. And again, this is assuming the best case scenario where we actually get a full $400,000 for our operations. So those various taxes, that 400,000, that makes up this small piece of the pie here for the operations that we need. The education fund that we can transfer from, that makes up about 44%. And then the referendum makes up the other 44%. So this would be the equivalent, if the referendum were to not pass this year, it would be the equivalent of us losing 44% of the funding we use to operate the schools. Now, I don't know about you, but if I lost 44% of my pay, I don't think I would be, getting very far with, my house, my car, the 5 kids I need to feed.
Can you explain more about the education fund and the operating fund? You haven't really gone over the education fund, how it's funded, where you get that money, and how you're transferring 15%, how that is operating fund, the two different funds.
Yeah. So the education fund is purely from state funds. It doesn't come from your property taxes at all. It is based on how many students we have in the school system. It's somewhere around 6,000, maybe 7,000.
Yeah, roughly 7,000.
7,000 now.
Per student.
Per student. What we are allowed to do is transfer 15% of that into the operations fund, which we need to do because of our situation. But I'd also like to point out that also takes away from our education fund, which pays our teachers and adds on our programs and all those types of things. So we're pulling from, one of our extremely important resources to keep the schools running, but that means that our teachers may not get the raise that they really deserve. It means that we might not have as many programs as our kids deserve. It means that we are constantly in this tug of war between how these funds work. So the education fund, like I said, though, that does not come from your property taxes at all. That's just state funded. Now, saying that, I want to remind you that the state totes about their nearly $3 billion surplus. Up to six. Yeah. So if they've got billions of dollars, and let's even assume that they need to keep a certain amount of that on hand, but if they have that much money and we're sitting here asking our residents to, pay a referendum to be able to keep our buses in action here, what kind of questions does that raise? What's going on at the state level? So I would encourage everyone to make sure that you're paying attention to who you're voting for our state representatives as well. We need people that will represent us well down at the state level if we ever want to get to a point where we're not asking for a referendum.
I would also just go into people when people are knocking on our doors to inform everyone, that the state does have a $6 billion surplus. And if people ask why, the one thing everyone should let them know is that that's the same question that everyone else wants to know as well. There's, like I said, our roads aren't the best. Public education is in the bottom 10% of the country, Indiana public education. If it's the one thing that I always compare it to a house, all right? Let's say I have $200,000 in the bank, but guess what? If my roof's leaking, if my windows are broken, if my door's falling off the hinges, if my foundation's cracked, there's no reason for me to brag about having $200,000 in the bank when everything else in my house looks like crap.
Falling apart.
Yeah, falling apart. At the same time, it's the same thing with Indiana, what they're doing with our tax dollars and that $6 billion surplus. They need to break into that and inform the people of that. That's a huge advantage that we have when we all go knocking on doors to inform our voting base of that scenario.
And so that's what I wanted to point out to people here as well. I mean, there's only so much that a school board can do. It's not like we can. I've kind of told people before, we aren't a business. I'm not Apple. I can't just drop a new iPhone and all of a sudden we've got enough money to run the schools another year. Some of our funding, obviously, like I said, we get our education fund from the state based on our enrollment. But as far as operating the schools, which requires $3.2 million, we on our best year, we get $400,000 and that's it. With transportation, school bus transportation being roughly $800,000, utilities and insurance, that takes up roughly 65% of our operating budget just with those three big ticket items. So that's why, unfortunately, of course, I hate to talk about this because I don't want to do this, but looking forward, if the referendum does not pass, we're going to have to take a very hard look at canceling school bus transportation. It's a very real possibility. The soonest we would be able to do that would be in February. Unfortunately, that's the kind of scenarios we have to look at right now because of the situation we're in. And I can assure you, no one here wants that to happen. Even if it's my own selfish reasons. I've got 3 kids that ride the bus and, maybe I don't want to take them to school in the morning. No. But at the end of the day, I try to tell people I have, again, my family's here. I have 3 kids in the school system, 1 that's going into the school system next year. I've got 4 nephews in the school system right now, actually 5. Yeah, 5. So when I'm up here trying to talk about these things, when I'm making decisions as a school board member, I mean, I have skin in the game. It's not like I'm not involved. It's not like it doesn't affect me. It affects me. It affects my whole family. So when we talk about these things, just make sure, I wanted to make sure that, you realize I'm not making a decision lightly, and this is not something we want to be even having a discussion about right now. I don't want to be talking about canceling school buses. That sounds just bizarre to me that we even have to talk about it. But with as expensive as it is, we don't really have much of a choice when push comes to shove.
How many employees roughly from the district work for the school?
I don't know how many live in the district and work here, but I mean, we have roughly 250 employees total, correct?
Yes, that's correct. The majority of the employees, getting back to your question, that live in our community, they really are the non-certified staff. The secretaries, the clerks, the paraprofessionals, those folks. And we haven't broken it down to know a specific number as to how many of those people there are.
And unfortunately, because of the way our schools are required to teach certain subjects, I don't think it would make.
Yeah, if you don't mind, that way our online audience.
Yeah, my question was, how many folks that live in the Lake Station School District actually work at the school? That being said, I'm sure it's quite substantial, like Dr. Kribler said. Most of those folks are your bus drivers, your paras, your maintenance staff, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure quite a few teachers as well. So not only is a failed referendum and a dwindling school budget just detrimental to the school, but it's also detrimental to the health of the community. On a national average, 6% of your home value is tied to the health of your school. So if you have a healthy, thriving school, you can count on 6% of your home value, what you can sell it for. If you're willing to take out, say your house is worth $100,000, if you're willing to give up $6,000 right off the top, I mean, I know I couldn't do that. And I couldn't feel good about doing that, especially to save pocket change.
Well, and to that point as well, I don't know what the latest number is on it, but my wife is pretty good about these things. And so she said that there was something about roughly 60% of the people that live in a community end up back in that community. And so, as I said, my whole family lives here. So with that, I mean, we have people that are working at these schools that, we had to make difficult cuts this past summer before the school year started to try to be as proactive as we could with the budget. And no one wanted to make any of those cuts, whether it was to extracurricular activities or to our staff or teachers. That's part of the reason why we made some of the tough decisions we did with school bus transportation to try and keep as many of those jobs as possible. But something, to keep in mind is this is our community. You're educating the people that are very, very likely to be your neighbors one day. And I would hope that you would want those neighbors to be good citizens and be mindful and polite. And if we don't have a strong school system to teach them right from wrong in a lot of ways, you could be looking at some terrible situations in the future. And I'm not just talking about annoying neighbors, but even dangerous situations with criminal activity and things.
I want to piggyback on the community part. Jason, being the councilman for Lake Station, who are the two biggest employers in this city? So
I believe the answer to that is River Forest and Lake Station schools. But I do want to point out something. My wife recently was in the hospital, and there was a CNA and 2 housekeeping members that came up. They had overheard my wife talking about me being on the city council, which was real fun for me because they came and attacked me thinking that we control those schools and whatnot. They were trying to, or they were looking to purchase homes in Lake Station. And they said they decided against it because of the recent events with the 3 days in school and And they were talking about the money and what are they doing with the money? And I had to explain to them what's being explained here, because we had the opportunity of hearing from Dr. Kripliver. He came to a council meeting, broke it down quite well. So thank you for that, because I would have been like lost going, but the domino effect that when you don't have, like somebody was you were pointing out earlier, a healthy school system, the community hurts. And I'm sure everybody's jumped on Facebook lately and seen a lot of misinformation and how people talk about our community, not just the schools, our lack of having a grocery store, but we don't have an expanding community. We're not going to get any of those things. People do look at the schools when they go to purchase a home. They want to know that they're going to be in school all 5 days, getting a quality education. But some of that comes from the fact if you have the courage as a community to say, yeah, we're willing to give up this little bit so that the kids can get what we had when we went to school. I went to River Forest, please don't boo me. But yeah, there you go. See, I got a cheering section over here, but had a lot of friends that played, I played Little League and whatnot with kids over here at Edison. But so it's always been these two schools, and I want it to, as a councilman, I want it to succeed. I wouldn't have gotten elected had it not been for Eagle votes too, just as much as the Ingram votes. So I'm hoping that some of the misinformation can be, dispelled by election time. But we need to seriously look at it and see that there is a domino effect in not doing this. Our community could fall as well.
Yeah, thank you. We have someone up front here as well.
Thank you. Okay, I have like 2 or 3 things. The first thing is, I heard you guys saying that the state has $6 billion surplus. How do we as a community tap into that for them to help us get funding if they're giving us 1.4 already?
It's gonna.
Yeah, that's a very good question. That $6 billion is a rainy day fund, as they pointed out, for the state of Indiana. So it would really be the General Assembly and the governor of our state be willing to access those funds for whatever purpose they choose.
Yeah, so it all comes down to who's representing you at the state level. And that's something, we have to take a good look at and make sure you're electing people with your best interest, the community's best interest in mind, not private companies or organizations that don't put into the communities like we do. What else did you have?
So basically the state, whoever we get to represent us, will funnel that money back out into the communities.
Yeah, if they see a need for it, and we have people.
So we can't just ask them.
I mean, you can certainly ask, but yeah, you would join a large number of people who have been pushing, we have, even with the Indiana School Board Association, they have people that lobby for positive change for the schools. And it's still just a matter of, making sure that the right people are in those positions, elected positions, to make the decision that's best for the state, best for the community. So.
Okay. And can we as a community raise money for the school, like our school district, without the state like all on you, like, okay, you guys raised $200,000, so you don't get this 200,000 from us? Or can we do that as a community?
Well, I mean, we are always happy to take donations for different programs and things like that. Now, what we're talking about here is a scale that is probably not going to be able to be met by those types of actions. Yeah, as much as I wish we could.
For sure.
We do appreciate any support. We get a lot of support, obviously, for athletic programs and some for academic programs as well. So by all means, anyone that wants to, help the community, help our schools, we appreciate anything that can be given.
Okay.
We've given you a lot of information tonight, and by leaving tonight, if you just leave remembering these two things. One, we are not the only school district in the region or even in the state that has to ask their communities for referendums. And some communities have 2 referendums to support their local school. So we are not alone in asking for referendum. The second thing I want you to know is the question is purposely deceiving to people. They want people to read it and they want people to automatically think, oh my gosh, my taxes are going up 65%. I can't afford that. Who can? And believe me, the school, River Forest School District, Lake Station School District, we would not be asking for an outrageous increase in property taxes. What that simply means is the referendum, the 54 cents that we're collecting from the referendum, 65% more of that revenue is going into the operations fund. Not that you're paying 65% increase in your taxes. The state is a referendum state. Many schools have referendums, some have 2. The question is deceiving. Please don't let it confuse you.
Did you have something else? I saw that you had that look on your face, so.
The visual, I guess that's what it is with everybody, and everybody is getting.
Could you take the microphone? Thank you so much.
The visual of it all is that everybody is getting confused because we think it's something different when it's not. So we just need to put it out to the community with paper, like knocking on doors for everyone to understand like what it really is in order for us to get it passed.
And we have been doing that a little bit. That right there, that door hanger, that is what we are, of course, giving to people or leaving on the door if they don't answer.
I just want to throw it out there. I am coordinating. I've been walking my up every single day. I need volunteers. So after this meeting, if anybody wants to help knock doors, I'm good. Please come see me.
They have definitely been going out. They stopped by my house actually yesterday. We had some fun.
Did they convince you to vote yes?
Oh, I was already convinced, I'll say that. But yeah, so they're definitely out there. They're not a huge business area. So again, just in case anybody didn't hear, anybody that wants to help her, find her.
And we walk after school and we'll also walk on the weekends, won't we?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Like I'm invested.
Handed these out for trick or treat.
I will say also, I will say also that if you go home and you find people near you that want to volunteer, on our webpage, there is a volunteers button. You can click that and still sign up. And Liz, who is coordinating it and doing an amazing job, she'll get your email and be able to contact you through that as well. So, share the word that we're always looking for volunteers.
And so just like we were talking about, raising funds for the school, I mean, using your time as well is a really valuable way to help out. I know that they had a small group on, was it Saturday, I believe, and they hit, something like 300 and some odd. I think I did a route too with my wife. So I think we're close to 400 houses just in those couple hours that, we were out on Saturday. So every little bit helps exponentially. So, yeah.
It does help if you have parents that were kids attend school here. It does make a difference. I know that as
you guys had some people that had kids in the school when you guys had your referendum go door to door. It's hard to, if you have a teacher or something, they'll, cynical part of them says, well, you want this because of this. If you have a parent, they're like, okay, wait a minute. They're more apt to listen, and say, okay, well, they want it for the same reasons why I would want it then. So just my little 2 cents.
Tell you what, that's a great thing when you can get students out and they see teachers. I don't know.
Yeah, Jacob, go ahead and hand him the microphone, please.
Yeah, I was saying, when when students come out to door knock or to their teacher comes to their front door and it's, oh my God, it's Mrs. Smith, my third grade teacher, I haven't seen you forever, or hey, we'll see you tomorrow in class. I mean, kids just light up. I know a few times that I went out with groups of teachers during ours, that I think kind of sold a lot of people when they saw how happy they were, especially the young kids, to see their kids. High school students, maybe not sometimes, it depends. I know I've been in that situation myself personally. That's a story for another day. But anyway, yeah, those are great things. And when they see, hey, this person's given up their time, not only do they watch my kid all day, and teach my kid, but they're also saying, hey, please help. They're taking time out of their day to show that they care and that they want to continue to do that job and do the best that they can with all the tools available for your kid. And it's really something special, I think.
Obviously I know this is, been a while, so I want to make sure, is there anything else that you wanted to cover?
No, you did a great job.
I'll gladly stick around a little bit if anyone else has any more questions and everything, but I don't want to tie everyone else up for, any longer than I need to. But, we really appreciate you coming out, and, it's really important to try to get this information to as many people as possible, as you might notice. But by all means, if you have to head out or anything like that, I don't want to tie you up anymore. But if you have any other questions, I'll stick around afterwards and talk to you as well, or we can address them as a group. But yeah.
And I do, once again, I want to thank the school board from River Forest. They were kind enough to write a letter supporting Lake Station Schools and endorsing your support for the referendum. So thank you. Thank you very much for that. That's huge. As well as the mayor and the city council. And I really appreciate Councilman, that resolution to support our referendum here in Lake Station. So thank you again for that. I appreciate that. That does wrap up the informational part of our evening tonight, but we will certainly stay around and answer any questions that you have. If you'd like to ask questions or make comments now, that would be fine. If you'd rather speak to us one-on-one later on this evening as people gather their belongings and get ready to leave, we will stay around and answer your questions too.
And feel free to make sure you grab some information on the way out, or a sign if you don't have one for your yard already also. So.
Oh, I thought getting a yard sign was a requirement for coming.
Got to read the fine print to everything, right?
Thank you, everyone, for coming. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.